Most men do not arrive at the end of life suddenly empty. They arrive there gradually emptied of courage, of intention, of the fire they once felt but chose not to follow. Not because they could not act, but because they delayed too often, and delay compounds. You tell yourself you have time, that you can begin later, that you will return to the idea when conditions are better. And while you repeat this, something quiet is happening. Your life is being spent without your full participation. That is the real cost. Not failure, but unused potential. The grave is not filled with men who tried and lost. It is filled with men who never fully committed, men who thought about what they could become, but never acted long enough to see it through. Let me ask you something honestly. If your current habits remained unchanged for the next 5 years, your level of effort, your willingness to act, your tendency to delay, would you be proud of where it leads you, or would something feel unfinished? That feeling is not weakness. It is awareness. Awareness of the gap between who you are and who you could be. And most men silence that awareness. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They convince themselves that they will return to it later, but later is deceptive. Later removes urgency, and without urgency, action weakens. You do not lose your life in one moment. You lose it in small decisions to wait. I'll start next week. I'll do it when I feel ready. I just need more time. Each thought seems harmless, but together they form a pattern that delays progress indefinitely. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to imagine a different life? To picture yourself acting with confidence, pursuing something meaningful, moving with direction instead of hesitation? That image is not random. It is a signal of what is possible if you act. But possibility alone changes nothing. It must be followed by decision, and decision must be followed by action. This is where most men stop. They think, but do not decide. They decide, but do not act. And without action, nothing changes. Life responds to movement, not intention. You can plan for years, analyze endlessly, prepare in detail, but until you move, your reality remains the same. Thought does not transform your life. Action does. And action must be consistent, not once, not occasionally, but daily. Because consistency is what builds momentum, and momentum is what turns effort into visible progress. Most men never reach momentum because they stop too early. They act for a few days, then slow down. They begin with energy, then drift. And each time they drift, they return to the same place, wondering why nothing has changed. The answer is simple. They did not remain. If I wanted to live life to the fullest, I would not begin with grand ideas or distant goals. I would begin with elimination, the elimination of delay, distraction, and the habit of postponing what I know must be done, because delay is the real enemy, not difficulty. Difficulty strengthens you, delay weakens you. I would choose one direction, not many, not scattered. One clear path aligned with what I know matters, and I would commit to it daily, regardless of how I feel in the moment. Because feeling is temporary. Decision must be fixed. There will never be a perfect time. Conditions will never be ideal. Doubt will always appear. Discomfort will always exist. And if you wait for those things to disappear, you will remain exactly where you are. Movement must come first. Clarity follows movement. Confidence follows repetition. And transformation follows consistency. This is the order, not the reverse. In this lesson, you will see clearly what most avoid. You will understand how life is lost through delay, how hesitation becomes habit, and how to break that pattern before it defines your future. You will learn how to act with urgency, not panic, but purpose. How to move with direction, not confusion. And how to live in a way that leaves nothing important undone. But before any method works, you must accept this. You are not waiting for more time. You are choosing how to use the time you already have. And the moment you choose to act without delay, without hesitation, you step out of the pattern that holds most men back and into a life that is fully lived. Most men do not lose their lives in a single moment of failure. They lose them gradually, through repeated decisions that appear harmless at the time. There is no sudden collapse, no dramatic turning point. There is only a quiet pattern, one of postponement, of delay, of choosing to act later rather than now. If I were to begin again, I would first understand this pattern, for it is the cause of more unrealized lives than any lack of ability. A man rarely says to himself, "I will waste my life." He says instead, "I will begin tomorrow." And in this small adjustment of time, something important is lost. Not immediately, but gradually. The danger of delay lies in its subtlety. It does not feel like failure. It feels like patience. It feels like preparation. It feels, at times, even wise. A man convinces himself that he is waiting for the proper moment, that he is allowing conditions to improve, that he is gathering strength before he begins. Yet while he waits, life continues. Time is spent, and what is not used is lost. There is no storehouse where unused days are kept. They pass silently, without return. If I were beginning again, I would not measure loss by what has gone wrong. I would measure it by what has not been done. For the greatest loss is not failure. It is unused capacity. A man may fail and learn. He may attempt and improve. But the man who delays does neither. He remains in thought, and thought alone produces nothing. There is a peculiar habit among men to imagine a different life without taking the steps required to live it. They see themselves acting with certainty, moving with direction, pursuing something of meaning. This image appears clearly in the mind, yet it remains there, untouched by action. This is not imagination alone. It is awareness, an awareness of what could be. But awareness without action becomes a source of quiet dissatisfaction. The man feels that something is unfinished, that something has been left undone, yet he continues as before. If I were beginning again, I would not ignore this feeling. I would examine it, for it is not weakness, it is indication. An indication that there is more within than is being expressed. Yet most men silence this indication. They occupy themselves. They remain busy. They fill their time with activity that requires little decision and less effort. And in doing so, they avoid the necessity of change. This is how delay becomes comfortable, not through intention, but through repetition. A man delays once, and nothing appears to change. He delays again, and still the effect is not visible. Thus, he concludes that delay carries no cost. Yet the cost is not immediate. It accumulates. Each delay weakens urgency. Each postponement reduces importance, until what once seemed necessary becomes optional, and what is optional is rarely done. If I were beginning again, I would not permit this reduction. I would treat what must be done as immediate, not distant, for distance weakens action. There is also the illusion of time. A man believes he has more than he does, not in years alone, but in opportunities. He assumes that what he does not do today may be done tomorrow without consequence. Yet tomorrow does not present itself in the same form. Conditions change, energy shifts, circumstance moves, and the opportunity once available may not return as expected. Thus delay alters possibility. If I were beginning again, I would not rely upon the assumption of later. I would act within the present. For the present is the only point at which action may occur. There is also a gradual fading that must be understood. A man begins with energy, with intention, with a sense of direction. Yet if he does not act, this energy diminishes, not suddenly, but steadily. The idea that once seemed important becomes less urgent. The desire that once felt strong becomes less compelling. And in time, it disappears, not because it was unworthy, but because it was not pursued. If I were beginning again, I would act while the desire is present. I would not wait for it to remain, for it will not remain without use. There are many who have possessed great ability, yet have produced little result. Not because they lacked intelligence, nor because they were denied opportunity, but because they delayed too often. They thought, they planned, they considered, but they did not act consistently. And without action, nothing is formed. Their lives become filled with what might have been. If I were beginning again, I would not allow this condition. I would move, even if imperfectly, for imperfect action produces more than perfect intention. There is also a distinction between being occupied and being engaged. A man may fill his progress time with activity, yet avoid what truly matters. He may attend to many small tasks, yet neglect the one that would move him forward. This creates the illusion of progress. He feels active, he feels productive, yet his position does not change. If I were beginning again, I would not confuse movement with advancement. I would ask not how much I do, but whether what I do leads me toward a definite aim, for only directed action produces result. There is also the matter of participation. To live fully is not merely to exist. It is to take part, to engage, to act upon what one knows must be done. Yet many remain observers of their own lives. They think about what they could do. They imagine what might be possible, but they do not participate fully. They remain at a distance from their own potential. If I were beginning again, I would not remain at that distance. I would enter through action, for action is participation, and participation is life. Others will begin to notice the difference in a man who no longer delays. They will observe that he does not speak of intention without execution. He does not postpone what is necessary. He acts when action is required. This creates a sense of presence, for the man is no longer removed from his own direction. He is engaged in it, and in this engagement, he begins to advance. There is also a shift in how time is experienced. The man who delays feels that time is abundant. The man who acts feels its value. He does not rush without reason, but he does not waste. He uses what is available, and in using it, he produces result. If I were to express this as instruction, I would say, do not delay what must be done. Act now. Let this be fixed firmly within. I do not postpone. I act while the moment is present. I use the time I have. Repeat this not as encouragement, but as principle. For the mind, when guided by such principle, begins to reduce delay. And in reducing delay, action increases. Thus, if I were to begin again from nothing, I would begin here, by removing delay. For in removing delay, I would begin to live, not in thought, but in action. And in action, life is no longer imagined. It is lived. Having seen how life is gradually diminished through delay, the next principle, if I were to begin again, is to uncover the deception that makes such delay acceptable. It is not force that causes a man to postpone action. It is comfort. The comfort of believing there is still time. The comfort of saying, I will return to this later. This comfort is dangerous, for it removes urgency. And without urgency, action weakens. A man does not abandon his purpose in a single decision. He postpones it, once, then again, and again, each time believing that he has lost nothing, yet something is lost, not visibly, but steadily. If I were beginning again, I would not accept this comfort without examination, for it is not harmless, it is costly. The thought of later creates relief in the moment. It removes pressure. It allows the man to avoid effort without feeling that he has failed. He has not said no. He has only said not now. Yet not now, when repeated, becomes never. This is the pattern. It is not declared, it is formed. There is also a tendency to disguise delay as preparation. A man tells himself he must think further, plan more carefully, wait for better conditions. He believes he is acting wisely. He believes he is increasing his chances of success. Yet in many cases he is avoiding action. Preparation has its place, but beyond a certain point, it becomes a substitute. The man remains occupied with thought, yet produces no result. If I were beginning again, I would recognize this boundary. I would prepare only enough to begin, no more, for action provides more clarity than extended thought. There is also the habit of seeking the perfect moment. A man waits for the time when he will feel ready, when conditions will align, when effort will seem easier. Yet such a moment rarely arrives, for readiness is not found in waiting. It is created through beginning. If I were beginning again, I would not wait for readiness. I would begin without it, for in beginning, I would create it. There is also a gradual lowering of standard that occurs through repeated delay. At first, a man holds his intention firmly. He believes it is important. He feels its urgency. Yet each time he postpones, that urgency diminishes. The task becomes less pressing. The aim becomes less vivid, until what once felt necessary becomes optional, and what is optional is often neglected. If I were beginning again, I would guard against this decline. I would not permit repeated delay to reduce the importance of what must be done, for importance must be maintained through action. There is also a difference between rest and avoidance. A. Man requires rest. He must recover his strength. But rest is intentional. It is defined. It is followed by return to action. Avoidance is indefinite. It has no clear end. It extends without decision. And in extending, it replaces action entirely. If I were beginning again, I would distinguish clearly between the two. I would rest when necessary, but I would not avoid. For avoidance becomes habit, and habit shapes life. There is also the matter of imagination. A man may imagine himself acting. He may see the result. He may feel the satisfaction of completion. Yet this satisfaction is false, for it has not been earned through action. It is borrowed from thought. And because he has experienced it, mentally, he feels less urgency to act physically. If I were beginning again, I would not allow imagination to replace execution. I would use it to guide action, not to replace it. There are many who have spent years preparing, considering, refining ideas that were never acted upon. They possessed knowledge, they possessed ability, yet they remained in preparation, and in remaining, they did not advance. If I were beginning again, I would not remain in this condition. I would move, even if imperfectly, for movement corrects itself. Stillness does not. There is also a shift in identity that occurs through repeated delay. A man who postpones becomes one who delays. He begins to see himself as someone who will act later, who requires more time, who is not yet ready. This identity is not chosen. It is formed through repetition. And once formed, it influences future action. If I were beginning again, I would not permit this identity to develop. I would act, and through action, I would form a different identity, one of execution, one of immediacy. Others will begin to notice this difference. They will observe that the man does not defer as they do. He does not speak continually of what he will do without doing it. He acts, and in acting, he gains respect. For men trust those who follow through. They rely upon those who do not delay unnecessarily. And in this trust, opportunity appears. There is also the realization that time does not expand. It moves constantly, without pause. The man who delays believes he has preserved opportunity, yet in truth, he has allowed it to pass. For opportunity exists within time, and when time is used for delay, opportunity is lost. If I were beginning again, I would not measure time by its length. I would measure it by its use. For a short period used well produces more than a long period spent in delay. There is also a quiet regret that forms through this pattern, not immediate, but gradual. A man senses that something has been left undone, that he has not fully used what was available to him. This regret is not loud, it is persistent, and it increases with time. If I were beginning again, I would not allow this regret to form. I would act before it becomes necessary. There is also a strengthening that occurs when delay is removed. At first, the man must act deliberately. He must resist the impulse to postpone. He must begin when it would be easier not to. But with repetition, this becomes easier. He becomes accustomed to acting at once. He no longer considers delay as an option. He moves directly from thought to action. This is freedom. Freedom from postponement. Freedom from hesitation. Freedom to use time fully. If I were to express this as instruction, I would say, do not rely upon later. Act now. Let this be fixed firmly within. I do not wait for another time. I act in the present. I use what is available. Repeat this not as encouragement, but as rule. For the mind, when governed by such rule, reduces delay. And in reducing delay, it increases action. Thus, if I were to begin again from nothing, having removed the illusion of delay, I would do this next. I would refuse the comfort of later. For in refusing it, I would reclaim the present. And in using the present, I would begin to build a life that is not postponed, but lived. Having uncovered the deception of delay and the false comfort of later, the next step, if I were to begin again, is to arrive at a moment few willingly face. It is not a moment of action, but of seeing. Seeing clearly. Seeing without excuse. Seeing without distraction. For before a man changes his life, he must first see the pattern that governs it. Most men do not lack effort entirely. They lack awareness. They move through their days repeating the same habits, the same delays, the same hesitations, without pausing to examine them. They remain occupied, yet not directed, and because they do not observe, they do not change. If I were beginning again, I would not rush immediately into action. I would first become aware, for awareness reveals what action must correct. There comes a moment, often quiet, often uncomfortable, when a man recognizes the difference between what he intends and what he does. He sees the distance between his potential and his present condition.